All right. So, Bismillah, Bismillah. Right, let's just see. Are we live? And is the audio coming through, people? All right, so let's take a look at the sound, do a quick audio check if I can. Let me bring up the YouTube comments as well. Right, Bismillah. All right. I see quite a few of you are here, live and active. Bismillah. Right, so if you can hear me loud and clear, right, I'm not sure if it's coming through. I'm echoing. Good to hear. Let me take a look. I'm probably not connected to the right microphone. All right. Let me try this one. Right, so Bismillah. Is it coming through? It's coming through clear. Allahu Akbar. إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فالسلام الله على القوم. أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا. All right, people. Right, shukran. Let's see who we've got. Arsalan Anwar, Mufti, mashallah, green blaze. Pakistan, Zindabad. Zindabad. Speaking of Pakistan, may Allah protect and bless Imran Khan. What turmoil, huh? What a crisis. I'm telling you. We'll come back to that. Let's see who's with us. Clear, Ahlan wa Sahlan, Nora, Ahlan wa Sahlan, Ibn Farnas, Subhan al-Haq, Ya Salam. Look at the name, I like it, huh? Subhan al-Haq. Allahu Akbar. I like it, people, I like it. Right, so look at this. Nabil Khan finished work. Allahu Akbar. Let's do this. That's the spirit. I like it. Let me bring up today's what I'm looking to go through. Whilst I'm doing that, you guys know the drill. Spread the love. That's it. Click like, share. Let me why is it doing this? View by extra large icons. Whoa. All right. Where we at? Right, so let me bring this. Wow, you know what I should do is I could see some of the older sessions here. Let's see. Okay, interesting. What is going on? Let me click on this, unless it's what is good? Let's see here it is. All right, Bismillah. All right, people. So that's what I'd like us to take a look at today, bi'ithnillah, with the theme that courage does not always rule. That there are many manifestations to this incredible quality of courage. Right. Before we... right, so... with that in mind, some Quranic guidance on purpose and providence. Wow. people, rizq, legacy, abundance, and just our trajectory, some Quranic guidance on that. And then from the legends of Islam, I would like us to explore a personality that is none other, Allahu Akbar, than Imam al-Awza'i. So these are some of the themes I'd like to explore. But with this in mind, Allah, people, courage does not always raw harm. Let's look at some of these abiyat. Abiyat are couplets in Arabic. So खुदा तुझे किसी तूफान से आशना कर दे कि तेरे बाहर की मौजों में इज़्तिराब नहीं. Wow. See that may. Now this is intriguing because it's almost you're wishing something against someone. Almost. I mean, it's one of those poems that you have a device within rhetoric where you say something but are intending the opposite in a way. So it's almost as if this is a curse, but it's actually a blessing for a legacy. So just as, so here, Khuda tujhe kisi tufan se ashna kar de. That may God familiarize you with a storm. वाह हाँ वाह कि तेरे बाहर की मौजों में इज़्तिराब नहीं. That the waves within your ocean, they seem to lack a veracity to them, a turbulence, a force. So what is in essence at face value, the person is almost wishing a struggle upon the other. But in reality, they are praying for their might. But it's a matter of perspective. So that's in light of today's theme, which is really addressing purpose in life, providence, but also the the initiative to set forth and do something. This is a well-known bait from the legend Mir Taqi Mir. Marg ek mandagi ka waqfa hai, yani aage chalenge dam lekar. This just it just has so many angles to unpack. Marg, which is the Persian word for death. Ek mandagi ka waqfa hai. It is just it is but a brief pause of similitude almost, of just, it's a temporary pit stop. Yani, aage chalenge dam lekar. That, and it's interesting that dam can be interpreted in many ways. I mean, it has many interpretations, many connotations. Of the obvious one of a breath that will continue to march forward, will continue this journey after we've taken a breath. And in many ways, that's, you see, he's thereby likening death to a respite, which is also linked to that word of respire. This it's also it has some familiarity with this this pit stop. So we'll take a breath and then keep on this journey forward into the great unknown of the afterlife. One could even say dam is sometimes used to mean courage. And, people would say, agar dam hai, to then do this. And that's a fascinating take on this, that we will set forward after that within death there is another courage by which we face the great unknown. Wow, he was truly a master of words. But that's what words are. I thought, speaking of legacy, then as always, some amazing quotes of the great Maulana Jalaluddin ar-Rum that I prayed for change. And this is really what I'm trying to explore with you guys today, about that courage doesn't always roar. That I prayed for change, so I changed myself, or changed my mind. What? It's like, what? I prayed for guidance and learned to trust myself. Because maybe that inner voice, that intuition, they were always whispers from guidance divine. So I prayed for guidance and learned to trust myself. It's crazy, on a side note, in psychology, how often we learn that the voice of intuition, the gut feeling, it is so incredibly on point. It's just that we often second guess it and cast doubt into it. Yeah, and you see that you'll see at times, in whether it's going to be perceiving something, in many psychological experiments, when people have been asked to spot something that is very vague or very inconspicuous or just ambiguous, it's not so clear what it is, whether it's this, that. But if they were asked to report immediately upon first glance whatever occurred to them, it more often than not was correct. But when they glanced at it longer and tried to work out logically what they were more likely to get it wrong. Far. This perpetual struggle of the inner self. And similarly, it says about reading people, that if a person, and micro expressions, although women are arguably far better at reading micro expressions than men, we the base universal expressions are all that make sense to us. It's like happy, sad, angry, worried. It's like we don't really register the micro stuff going on. Women can just pick it all up. Like, see, the game is rigged, people. The game is rigged. I prayed for abundance and realized my doubt kept it out. I prayed for wealth and realized it is my health. Wow, honestly. You know, these two sentences, I prayed for abundance and realized what? That my doubt kept it out. I kept second guessing myself and thereby preventing this risk. You know, it's sometimes there's there's probably so much in our story that could have been so different had we not second guessed ourselves and, you know, hesitated. Allah, you know, as the poet says that إذا كنت ذا رأي فكن ذا عزيمة فإن فساد الرأي أن تتردد. That if you are a person of opinion, then match it with resolve. For many, a good goal, if you like, has been ruined by hesitation. Wow. What else? Did I put any other? Yeah. What else? What could be better than to seal that with a line from the legend, Hazrat Jaun Elia. You know, Jaun Elia is just such a character. He he resonates with us all in so many different ways. Yeah. जिंदगी कम पड़ गई वरना वो न मिलता मजाल थी उसकी. You gotta love it, honestly. And here he's speaking about a beloved of his, let's say, the object of desire. You know, as Lacan, object petit a, or even just really, it doesn't even have to be that object. It could, this wanting could be wanting with a capital W. It could be desire with a capital D. That reminded me of Cello, a meme from a long time ago. But it could be, you see, this could be about a goal. It could be about a legacy. It could be about anything. It could be about a person. But this object of desire here could be anything. That जिंदगी कम पड़ गई वरना वो न मिलता मजाल थी उसकी. You know, he says it's life that fell short. Otherwise, whether it's him, her, it, the goal, the target, that I would not have achieved it. Does it have such audacity that I would not have achieved it? But here, the audacity is being attributed to it. Majal thi uski. You see, and thereby personifying the goal, that the goal, whether it's a legacy, whether it's a person that they wanted this legacy, he says, Yaar zindagi kam par gayi. That it's not the legacy. That I would have achieved, he says. That does it have the audacity that it could avoid me? That's what he's saying. वो ना मिलता मजाल थी उसकी. He says, जिंदगी कम पड़ गई. It's the runway that fell short. Flight was always in our destiny. This क्या बात है, क्या बात है. Yeah, so let's see what's going on. Right, so growth happens when you step outside your comfort zone. So true. So true. Being a Man United fan, this resonates, right? Allahu Akbar. Right, yeah, I don't um well, I don't really watch football, so um somebody said, "What's real courage today? To tell your wife that you want a second wife." Ayo Samir of Bosnia. We're gonna hear tomorrow that Samir of Bosnia allegedly committed suicide in his sleep whilst repeatedly beating himself over the head with a frying pan. And then Bechara, as a backup contingency strategy, had also poisoned his morning coffee. All in an attempt to commit suicide. The coroner's report will just say it's a simple open shut case. Clearly, clear self an attempt, not an attempt, a successful attempt. He euthanized himself, Bechara. So, right, so what a yeah. We've got the Asim. He's not any Asim, the Asim. Salam from Houston. Kya baat hai? Houston, we have a problem. Well, Asim ji, here's the problem, you see. Allegedly, every Asim in who appears as a narrator in Hadith is da'if. Did you know that? Fun fact. That's actually a fun fact that every Asim in a chain of transmission in Hadith literature is weak. And some people made an exception for one, but fun fact, right? So, what is going on? Speaking of, since Bechara Samir of Bosnia mentioned his unrelenting love for the mystery woman for whom he euthanized himself. Right, so that reminds me that doesn't remind us that in line with that, people, what a synchronicity. Well, I've got a poem for you guys. It's actually a contemporary poem, but this is the build up. This is actually the build up. So this is a drum roll. تراميل نحوك أغدو قاب أنفاسي. That I'm inclining, that I'm drawn towards you. I go, that brought within the proximity of breaths. That's how close. كما يميل النواسي على الكاسي. As the alcoholic is so drawn to his drink. وألمح الحب في عينيك يغمز لي. And I see gleaming in your eyes this love that taunts me, that teases me. Nutty, nutty, yeah. فهل ألام إذا استعجلت إحساسي. He says, am I to blame if I have just hastened towards my feelings? it says, ملأتني بك حتى مسني خجل. Sorry, ملأتني بك حتى مسني خجل. That you have taken over my entire entity, my body, my soul, until I am feeling modest from myself. من فرط ما غازلتني أعين الناس. That now the way people look upon me, I find myself shy and bashful and embarrassed. All this, people, that was the drum roll leading up to. He follows it by كل النساء أحاديث بلا سند وأنت حديث لابن عباس. This has to be one of the greatest lines of poetry dedicated to a woman. Honestly, this has to take the crown, people. What more could be said in praise to a woman? He said that all the women on earth to me are like ahadith bila sanadin. They are ahadith that have no sanad, they have no chain of transmission. They're fabricated hadith. All the women to me are like fabricated hadith. Wa anti, whilst you are in your maqam, your station, hadithun libni Abbas. You, whilst they are fabricated hadith, you to them are like a hadith of Ibn Abbas, one of the most wisest of all companions. Wow. What more could be said in praise? Huh? So, كل النساء أحاديث بلا سند وأنت حديث لابن عباس. Wow. Right, so let's see what's going on. Thoughts on a recent debate on hijab. I've not seen this debate. Right, so what are your thoughts on aliens? Right, so what are your thoughts on aliens? For all we know, we could be the very aliens. All right, so my thoughts on aliens are, yeah, I'm not so sure we will find aliens. Look at this. Mufti, you always say that to me. What, this couplet about anti hadithun libn Abbasi? Oh, the Asim comment. Oh, the Asim. Right, so about aliens, I don't think we're going to find aliens. And the reason being, it's not that aliens don't exist in that sense, but rather it's because we are living within a kind of holographic simulation, really. I feel that the whole universe is a simulation by divine design, of course. So within this universe, I think it would be difficult, despite its vastness, to find aliens. But what if it's... I think the existence that we're seeking, or the entities, may be from different dimensions. So, yeah, and obviously, how can we understand or explain that? I don't know. But what if, what if consciousness, which is permeating through into this simulation, into this existence, which we have. You see, that is the ruh, and that is the actual player of the game in this kind of symbiotic relationship with us, because it's so we are, the recipient device. So I suppose that does ask the question about consciousness and a dimension or a realm of consciousness, then, as in, is it just part within this realm, or is it from another realm that is then permeating this realm? As in, is there an alamul arwah, where the arwah, or where consciousness, a world, a universe of consciousness that then permeates this universe? And does that consciousness, before it's an ultimate connected consciousness, does it have its individual particularities? Are they also like personified consciousness? I don't know. Nobody knows. यही तो मजे की बात है. But I once lowered my consciousness, shall we say, to a state where, yeah, it was interesting seeing reality so differently. But in it, there was a perception that something along those lines, but it's difficult to properly articulate. Oh well, let's move on. Right, somebody said there was a debate with DH, that's Daniel Haqiqatju, and a Murtada. Who is Murtada? I don't know which Murtada. Is that a popular person, or I don't know who it is. So, Mufti, I noticed your recent video clips get more views, tend to be topics related to religion. Oh, that reminds me. Right, yes, there were some. It's interesting. So one of my videos recently shared was about men and women being polygamous, and there were a few on this topic, and there was one stating that women generally are not polygamous by nature. And this, I noticed, got a lot of people were somewhat upset by some people in the comments. They were thinking, what the hell is Mufti saying? How are women? Oh, not even true. Why is he basing it on other animals and creatures? I mean, look, it's not, you don't have to, these kind of topics are scientific. They're not actually based on opinions. So you can, you can perform your hypothesis and contribute to the pool of field research and say, well, fine, I don't think human females are monogamous by nature based on this data. And what is the data? What data do you have? It doesn't. So you'd say, well, you'd have to perform a certain amount of data, but you'd have to gather and collate and try to. But I think you'll actually, if you did that, you'll find it strangely disproving your own hypothesis. And I think what people are confusing in this topic, you see, polygamous and monogamous doesn't mean. So some person had left a comment. I read a comment saying, oh, that is to do with marriage. Marriage is a human construct. So, obviously creatures, you can't compare human beings to creatures because creatures don't get married. Acha. Thank you for informing us about that. Now, if you decide to go back to your slumber state, this is actually a scientific discussion. are uh, are women, or are the female species across species monogamous or polygamous. This is the term they use as well in scientific literature. It's not something we're using only as Muslims or as religious religious people. And obviously here the term it's extended from monogamy, but it's not carrying that element of a a marriage. It means to have settled with one partner. That's what it means. So yeah. Now, people were getting quite worked up, some people, because they were misunderstanding. And I think that that's what it really stems from. So, what this doesn't mean is they don't have attraction to multiple people. That would always be the case. I think all creatures, all humans, or broadly speaking, would always have some level of attraction to countless people. So, whether people would fancy celebrities to people they just come across, that's not what the discussion means about monogamy and polygamy. So I think that's what people are confusing it with. That to fancy someone, to be sexually attracted, and they're thinking, well, obvious, how can you say women are not? Nobody's debating that. That's a given. Everybody is like that. What it means is when a person is firmly, happily settled with a partner, that do they have an innate drive to have other partners in addition to that partner? So you'll find actually you'll find the data. I mean, you can research it. This is, not something which a person is making up. That women, when they have, let's say, if a woman is married and having an affair, or if she's in a relationship, she doesn't have to be married, and she's having an affair, this often will always come down to the fact that there is a discontentment in that relationship, that there is that she doesn't feel valued, or she feels that there's something lacking, or she's doesn't feel validated, or she doesn't feel, or she feels neglect, or this she feels incomplete. There is something lacking in her psychology. Therefore, she then she stumbles upon or embarks some validation, some kind of fulfillment elsewhere that she then is drawn towards. So you'll find now this doesn't mean every single person, but for the most part, and that's how things work within theories, that you have to generalize. So for the most part, that is what it would be for women. For men, it won't be like that. Now, this is where you draw the difference. So within the DNA, there will be an element for the pursuit for sexual variety. That regardless of happiness, it's not, in fact, it would have nothing to do with that. So this is where, when you take it down at a DNA genetic level to that point, because it's hardwired from evolution to spread the seed, in the sense to have more offspring, to populate. And this is how the world, obviously, this is how we've arrived at where we are. Now, that's not to say one way is wrong and the other way is right. This is just nature. This is just how, and human beings are part of nature. Now, that's not to say that every single human being would be like that. And it's not to say all men will follow out on that desire, given the current climate. I'm not saying that they will, but this is what the data shows psychologically. It shows that, and this is why I drew it down to that absurd hypothesis. So, which obviously was hilarious, but it was absurd that if you had, a giant room, a person, a man submerged in 100 women, that it would be an absolute fantasy for generally for most men, and for the male mind anyway. And the opposite, a woman submerged in 100 men, would be a mental violation for most females. So it's, and the reason an absurd example was given is to show that once you peripheralize something, you take it to its borders, you can then see the differences quite starkly. Then you can work your way backwards. So the concept was, because I felt by seeing some of the comments that people totally didn't get the topic. It was saying if people were in a settled relationship full time, would that woman want to, whilst being in a happy, fulfilled, let's say 100% fulfilled relationship, would she at that point want to also just go out and have sexual encounters with other men? You'll find, generally speaking, no. That is across the board. Whereas men, the mind and the DNA, now I'm not saying they will do it, but the DNA will dictate yes, still, regardless. Now, it doesn't mean that they'll act out on it. Now, I'm not saying that people don't have the willpower to control things, but the DNA would still lean that way. It wouldn't be like with just because everything is brilliant, it's 100%, you couldn't get any better, it's a dream come true. Still, the DNA would lean that way. They would still, the desire would want variety. Now, it doesn't mean that they will act on that. It doesn't mean, so just to, I get it. Some people, when they hear this, they just freak out because of insecurities. But I was just, in that clip, I was just highlighting the science, and it got people offended. And I thought, what the hell, I thought, you speak religion, people get offended. You speak science, people get offended. तो पीछे ही जा रहे हैं यार. We've gone at this speed, we're pre-Copernicus. And I've always felt that this is the genius of Islam, where it has always polygamy. See, I think Islam is ahead of the curve. That you watch, Western societies are going to come to polygamy. Give it a few generations. We've just been ahead of the curve, that's all, as Muslims. They will, in time to come, it is going to come back to this, because they're exploring all the other variations. And in the end, كل شيء يرجع إلى أصله. It's going to come back to the DNA in the end. But that's my hypothesis of kya pata. Who knows who will be alive to see the outcome of that, right? And yeah, and so women are just, so this is not to, so once again, it's not to say that there isn't, this is, I think if you give it in, so that's the best way to understand it. Imagine you had an absolute fulfilled, like a woman was absolutely in love with a man. She's absolutely in love with him. And they are in a full-time relationship. It's the best that it could possibly be. They are walking in, it's just amazing. It's a dream. They're living together, everything. That woman in that state of mind would not be seeking mentally, her DNA would not be seeking to be having sexual encounters with other men. It wouldn't be. And it doesn't mean she won't fancy. Like, fancy doesn't, you see, fancy is not that kind of an urge. Fancy is just more like if she's watching a movie and she thinks, oh, that actor is so good looking. It doesn't mean that. It means an actual real urge. Not so if she's in an 100% fulfilled relationship, you will not find it. It's only when the relationships are not fulfilled that the woman's urge then to seek it elsewhere will appear. That's the difference with the male DNA and psyche, that it has nothing to do with the relationship. The relationship is 100% perfect, but the DNA would dictate the urge. Now, it doesn't mean that they would act out on the urge always. People may control it, but that's how. So when you bring it down to that point, you can clearly see the difference. So yeah. So I think that's you have to, and it doesn't matter what people say. That what this point that I'm saying is this is factual. This is how it is. You will not find women, and this is why women often. Um, you'll find women, for example, women often fight harder for relationships because the way they are bound to it, it really ties deep into their psyche, the bond. Secondly, you'll find often women, for example, when the guy has cheated on them, their often response is, they don't get it, that were they not enough? Because you see, from their DNA, when something is enough, they don't look anywhere else, or there are no urges to look anywhere else. But that's not the male DNA. So this is why often you'll find, whether it's in literature, in books, in real life discussions, that when the woman has been cheated on, her first response to the man would always be that, because they're mirroring their own sense of the world onto them. They're thinking, well, the only reason I would do that is if he wasn't enough. Was I not enough? So this is because that's how they see the world. And the man would often be trying to explain that that's not what it is, as you see in all these studies. And what's interesting, yeah. So this is actually a very fascinating discussion within psychology. I remember when we did it within our psychology degree. It's really fascinating seeing cultures around the world, how they disagree on these matters. How, for example, polygamy in obviously in Muslim, in our societies, is, it's a valid truth. How in other societies things are different. How things like are, what is considered cheating, even, it's interesting that, is it the actual act? Obviously, is it even just texting and an emotional attachment? And a fascinating point of discussion here was, with women were asked that, would you rather, for example, your boyfriend met somebody, had a one night stand, or that he was chatting, flirting for and having feelings for somebody at work but hasn't slept with them? And it's interesting that and they asked the same thing to men. And for men, it was always physical. Like, they were like, of course, that should rather not have slept with the person. But for the women, for the most part, it was the other way, that they would rather none. But if given the choice, they would rather it was a fling that meant nothing than an emotional bond, which had no sexual contact yet. So that, see, when you take these things, you start to see a difference in the fitrah, which is really fascinating. In line with that, actually, Japan, in the study, they showed that part of the Japanese culture was that husbands were not. So these one night stands, that's, you met somebody in a bar or something, was not considered adultery. So I remember at the time in the class, people were thinking, "Acha, yeah, how do you Japanese culture?" We got everybody's got people. What is this? Yeah, Tokyo me kya ho raha hai? But they had this. They said in Tokyo, or in Japan, not just Tokyo, that the culture was these one night stands, or even men going to see escorts or prostitutes, or just a one night meaningless fling somewhere, was not by the culture deemed adultery. It was just deemed being silly. At the time, we in class were thinking, "Acha, how do you ka ho raha hai in Japan?" Anyway, right, let's but I think sometimes it's just amazing to observe the fitrah of insan, just to stand back and observe it all. It is a divine comedy, honestly. It's so, it's so it's just amazing to observe. Human beings are truly just, it's it's like we are just an an experimental observation, ain't we? In everything we do, it's just so amusing to just think, wow, how do people that we're so weird, we're so bizarre, we're so yeah. Does it really make a woman polygamous if there is a lack in a relationship? No, it doesn't make a woman polygamous. Nobody said it makes a woman polygamous, right? Nobody said that. Um, yeah, so for the Americans, what does the word fancy mean? Oh, do Americans not use the word fancy? To fancy something. Is that a British term? Ah, yeah, I guess it is British. I'll leave it uh to the comments. Right. Fancy. Yeah, fancy is to to take that kind of a liking, to take a liking to something. Um, to it's yeah, it's more of a British thing. Yeah. Um, I mean to find some yeah, in a person, yeah, it could mean that you find somebody attractive. Oh, you fancy them. But it's not fancy is still a light term. It's not a like a heavy driven term. Right. Okay, let's move on, people. Right. Okay, let's see. Bismillah. I wanted to just waiting for this to load up. Somebody said King Charles um coronation coming up. Has he invited me? Can I reclaim the Kohinoor as part of the Indian legacy? I go, फिर भी दिल है हिंदुस्तानी. Hmm, right, so I fancy you. Geo Mary Jaan. I fancy all of you as well. Not यार ये क्या बोल रहे हैं हम? Oh, this is mhm. That's a Luton terminology. Luton. Yeah, like having a crush on someone. Yeah, sure. That's good. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Um أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I want to take a look at two verses of the Quran, people, that could shed some light and guidance on purpose and providence. One from Surah Al-Hajj and then from Surah Al-Kahf, yeah, the cave. So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم هو اجتباكم, and this is iqtibas taken from within the ayah, that هو اجتباكم وما جعل عليكم في الدين من حرج. That this is such an empowering verse, that Allah reminds us هو اجتباكم. He chose you. Just remember that. Whenever you find yourself facing an obstacle, a hurdle, a difficulty, a challenge in life, whenever you face yourself with prospects of failing or of despondency, despair, a lack of ambition or willpower, just remember huwa ijtabakum. Allah chose you amongst all these people. He chose you to be that very person that is facing that. In your story, other people have got their own. Huwa ijtabakum. Just in knowing that, There is so much courage. And this is what is meant, that courage doesn't always roar. It does not always roar. It is not always that, yes, undoubtedly, courage is in those things high and mighty. But it is equally in facing these gradual incremental steps, these micro hurdles, this individual personal problem that you're going through as a person. It is in that just as much. And it may not be making so much noise. It may not be, people may be thinking, oh, but what's so courageous about having to, oh, what's so courageous about, setting up some kind of company, or what's so courageous about even turning up to work? What's so courageous about turning up to the gym? What's so courageous about eating healthy? What's so courageous about being ill or being depressed, but in the face of it rising? That these are your struggles, your story. Huwajtabakum. He has chosen you. Do not fall short. Do not waver. Do not give up. Huwajtabakum. Allah has chosen you. And even if this story at this stage doesn't seem so enthralling and exhilarating and so exciting, but the story isn't over yet. This is but just the beginning. There's so much more to come yet. So many amazing things to be unveiled. So many victories to unfold. So remember that huwajtabakum. وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. It's amazing how your choice is then sequenced with the nature of the deen, the ontology, the fabric of what makes this faith. وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. Allah has not placed this deen as one of inconvenience for you. This deen is a source of strength. It is a source of determination, hope, inspiration. It is a deen that if you are struggling, it provides you with rukhas, it provides you with conveniences, it provides you with exemptions, it provides you with welfare. When you are down, it provides you with courage. ما جعل عليكم في الدين من حرج. This deen is one of ease. The deen, I say this time and time again, should always be something that complements your life, not something which impedes it. It should not be, the deen is not about being a hurdle, a speed bump, it's not about that. The deen is something that complements your life. It smoothens the rough. It facilitates the hardships. It fuels the flame. هو اجتباكم وما جعل عليكم في الدين من حرج. So remember that. Such an empowering verse from Surah Al-Hajj, verse 78. And in light of today's, especially today's theme, that courage does not always rule, that there is a divine wisdom to things that sometimes we don't get. We don't understand it. That you have this verse that you've got here from the story of Musa alayhi salam and Khidr, verse 77. فانطلقا حتى إذا أتيا أهل قرية استطعما أهلها. And they set off on this journey until they came to a people and they sought food from them. فأبوا أن يضيفوهما. And the people were rude. Told them, shoo, get away. Get away, get away. I haven't got time for you. This was the people, أهل قرية. فأبوا أن يضيفوهما. Turning back guests, you see, especially in the past and even in many cultures today, especially Muslim cultures, that a guest is the personification of the mercy of God. You know, they say that mehman khuda ki rahmat hota hai, that this is a mercy, a personified mercy from God is a guest. فَأَبَوْا أَنْ يُضَيِّفُوهُمَا. Get lost, get away, shoo, shoo, get away. We don't. They were asking for food. You know, what harm is there to give a little something to someone who's hungry? What does Allah say in the Hadith Qudsi? That had you fed that hungry person, لَوَجَدْتَنِي عِنْدَ, you would have found God. You would have found me. You thought you were feeding the hungry person. No. Had you fed him, you would have found me with him. But here, فَأَبَوْا أَن يُضَيِّفُوهُمَا. See, they're shooing them away. Get out of it. Oh, get lost. Get away. We don't give food to strangers. We don't give food to. فَوَجَدَا فِيهَا جِدَارًا يُرِيدُ أَن يَنْقَض. In the vicinity of this village, of these people who had been terrible, been just so rude and demoralizing, they had that they told Musa alayhi salam and Khidr to get away from them, go, and refuse to give them anything. There is this wall that is dilapidating. It's falling over. So فَأَقَامَهُ. Khidr starts to fix the wall. Labor for free. Sits about, picks up bricks, sets up this firm wall which was part of a foundation. Musa alayhi salam is bewildered. Who wouldn't be? You know, when somebody hurts your heart, it is truly, you know, one of the worst things to experience. That, you know, when you're in time of need and somebody turns you away, it shatters the heart. This is why there's a hadith that, you know, that Allah says, you'll find me with those whose hearts have been shattered. Allah. Allah. Ana عند المنكسرة قلوب. You see, dil toot jata hai. And here, if a person was hungry and it hurts, sometimes these things hurt more than the actual. Once I've told you guys before, I won't go into it, but I mentioned that years ago, was a decade back, I was kidnapped in Cairo, and the whole thing was, I've mentioned it before in a story, and I was dumped by this abandoned stream, right? So, and it was freezing. It was the middle of the night, and just had a t-shirt on, and it was on, and I was bleeding a bit, and I I remember thinking that, oh, there were no lights in any, I couldn't see any lights. And I'm thinking, shall I go this way? I'm going that way? Then I'm thinking, shall I go that way? And it's just all abandoned, derelict buildings. There's nothing, there's no people, no residents, no lights, just this stream and this kind of, I guess, like an abandoned road. And then I'm jogging to keep warm, and eventually in the distance, I see this light, and I was so, oh my God. I was so just thrilled. A person, because I needed to get back to my hotel. So I jog, jog, jog. I turn up to this person, and it turns out to be a small bakery. And I said to him, Assalamu alaikum, I said, أحتاج إلى بعض المساعدة. I need some help, please, can you get me a phone? I need to make a phone call. And you could see that, look, I was slightly kind of bleeding. There was some blood coming down my hand and my lips. And you could tell that obviously I'm a foreigner, I don't look Egyptian. So, and the person just looked at me and just goes, "Sure, get away, go, 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 go." Wow. And and I said, huh? I said, look, could I, I said, you don't understand. I'd been kind of kidnapped and just dropped here and robbed. And um, I said, could I just make a phone call? And he said, oh no, go. And I had my hotel card, and I said, look, could you call the hotel for me? Here's the, and he said, no, go. Go. He said, right, and I just, okay, and I walked off, and I remember that hurt me more than the whole the whole incident. I wasn't as hurt as I was by this person just, being so unhelpful. I just couldn't fathom how you could be so unhelpful to another person who was in need. But it's amazing that at time of need, if a person is to shun you away, that how that shatters the heart, it's incalculable. So yeah, I mean, my thing, I've mentioned it all before, and I'm sure it's on YouTube. I mean, Allah works in mysterious ways, and it did all work out in the end. Alhamdulillah. Allah be praised, huh? Fun and games. But here you see, in this instance, Musa alayhi salam, um, right, Musa alayhi salam is surprised that why is Khidr alayhi salam doing an act of service for these people? And Tika, if you want to do an act of service, he's not objecting to the act of service. Musa alayhi salam is saying, look at his reply. Look at his reply. Oh, his interjection. Musa alayhi salam. He says, لو شئت قال لو شئت لاتخذت عليه أجرا. Allah, that is so beautiful. Because this, it is so intriguing that he's not asking for anything that's irrational. He's not saying, why did you build a wall? He's not saying, those people were so blah, 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 bleep, 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 bleep to us. You should not do anything to help. He's not saying this. He's a Nabi of God. He's from the highest maqam. What is he saying? He's saying something that is actually of justice. He's saying something that is actually a valid rule of life. That is that upon which this world is built and works. He's only saying, قَالَ لَوْ شِئْتَ لَاتَّخَذْتَ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا. Allah. He's saying, if you wanted, you could have charged them for that. You see, so Khidr alayhi salam builds this wall. Musa alayhi salam is not, and then he's walking off, and Musa alayhi salam's walking after him. And he's not saying, see, because Musa alayhi salam was assuming, okay, he's built the wall, maybe he will now go and ask for some food in return, because he'll say, hey guys, you guys probably didn't have the skill set, you probably didn't have the know-how, maybe you didn't have the time or the resources, but this wall was dilapidating. I built it for you. In turn, you know what? You can just give me a certain amount of bread, certain amount of reward, a certain amount. Do I deserve it? Yeah, 100%. And most likely they would have agreed. Let's just be reasonable. They may have agreed. There's a potentiality. Is this request is this request unreasonable? No. Is this unjust? No. Musa alayhi salam is actually, but he's surprised. He doesn't say this when Khidr is building the wall. Khidr has built the wall. He's completed it. He's got up. He's walking. Musa alayhi salam's walking with him. Oh, they're walking away from the village. I thought we'd go to the village. I thought we'd ask for some recompense. قال لو شئت لاتخذت عليه أجرا. He's saying, you could have just taken a reward for this. After all, were we not hungry? Did we not deserve a reward? ألسنا بمستحقين? Of course we are. So this question of Musa alayhi salam is not an unreasonable, it's very reasonable, it's very rational, very logical. At this point, Khidr says, did I not tell you, إِنَّكَ لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. You cannot be patient with me. This is it. He says, هَذَا فِرَاقُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنِكَ. Let's split. Enough done, enough said. Wow. And the story of Khidr, we're going to come back to some other day, the whole story. But here, what is beautiful is there are certain actions in life. Just do them. Don't seek a reward. Let your reward be with God. See, this is where you will find that certain Mufassirin have said that if Khidr had taken a reward from them, it's as if he has diluted the reward that God will give him. And when somebody does you wrong, to do something kind for that person, oh, that's a struggle. Try this. Sometimes if you are thinking of someone, I try this, and I want you all to try this, inshallah. Sometimes if you are thinking, suddenly you get a bit of a distasteful thought about someone for no reason. Let's just say somebody says something and you feel a bit envious. Hota hai yaar. It happens. You're a human being. You feel almost jealous. Somebody say, hey, I just got this. You think, yaar, could have been better. I could have got it. You know, hota hai kuch kuch yaar. You know, we're human beings. You feel a bit in your heart. You wanted to go somewhere you couldn't go. Other people got to go. You wanted that promotion. You didn't get it. Somebody else got it. You're struggling with some finances and you see somebody else, living it large. They're getting extra. Oof. Dukta yaar. You know, it hurts. Yeah, somebody said, look, Imran, Imi just said you wanted that girl, but she no want you, man. What's the poet says? He says, علقتها عرضا فعلقت غيري علق أخرى غيرها الرجل. He says, yeah, I became infatuated with her, but she was infatuated with another, who was infatuated with another. Kuch kuch hota hai. So when all of this is happening, what you do, you know, when you find yourself a bit envious, a bit with almost like with a bad feel, with a bad, yeah, maybe, yeah, just a negative energy towards someone. You know what? In that moment, I want you to try this. As soon as you become aware of this, that, that damn, I'm feeling a bit jealous. I'm feeling a bit. I want you to make dua for that person. May Allah give them more and more. Ameen. Oh my God. It's going to cost you nothing to do it. Nothing. But believe me, the moment you do this, this is how you set your soul free. Allah will give you regard. And I tell you, abundance is in letting go. You do this for Allah, Allah will do things for you. قال لو شئت لاتخذت عليه أجرا. If you wanted, you could have taken a reward for that. He knew he could have, but his reward was with God. You see, this is, let there be some actions in this world that you do for the sake of Allah, that you do with a pure heart and intention. You will find the fruits of them anyway, but better than any fruit with it, you will find God. Nothing will beat that. So it's not wrong to seek compensation or to be recompensed for what, to be given your due for something that you have done. But sometimes doing something solely for no reward, that has in it an intrinsic qualitative reward that is incalculable. May Allah really open up these realities for us. Ameen. I wanted to share that with you, these two verses. وَاجْتَبَاكُمْ وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ فانطلقا حتى إذا أتيا أهل قرية استطعما أهلها فأبوا أن يضيفوهما فوجدا فيها جدارا يريد أن ينقض فأقامه قال لو شئت لاتخذت عليه أجرا. That is, people, we have in this courage that even if it is silent and does not roar, it has an echo that can be heard throughout your lifetime. May Allah bless these things for us. Ameen. Ameen. Let's move on, people. Right. Oh, this reminds me. Right, what just happened there? This reminds me. Uh, before I forget, I'm not sure if we'll do this in more depth another time, but many people may not be aware that Carl Jung, he actually has um, somewhat of a commentary on certain parts of Surah Kahf of the Quran, which may come as a surprise, actually. And so, two key things he speaks about. He has this in his answers to Job, but where he'll on one is the sleepers of the cave. He speaks about that. So he is looking at these narratives within the Quran as symbolic, which, by the way, other Sufi mystic commentators have done it way before him. But he is looking at that, and what we'll do one of the days, we'll go through all of these in some detail, but he sees these as symbolic and about the process of individuation, where you are taking your psyche, which is going to be the conscious and the unconscious mind, and you are kind of dealing with it all, dealing with the shadow. And you are what the term he uses is individuation. You are individuating, which is almost like a rebirth. You are emerging, but with this newly found um, consciousness. So it's fascinating that he sees this story as symbolic, and he characterizes Musa alayhi salam as the conscious mind, and he has with him, whether it's going to be other guidance, or one could say the intellect or other things, other wisdom of the earth is his assistant, his helper. And the fish, you see, because in the story they have this, they're looking for this wise servant of God, Khidr, the green one, and they're told that it's about the fish. The fish will be the key, but they're not fully sure what's going to happen with the fish. But the fish will hold the secret, and the fish, Jung says, because the fish is that which cannot be caught by humans, as in within the sea, it's so difficult to grasp, and it's so elusive, and he sees it in many traditions, Jung argues, as symbolic for the unconscious mind. So when they go to sleep at that place and the fish escapes into the sea is the collective unconscious of where the unconscious mind, the fish, actually belongs. And in the what we have in the ayat, it says when they reached Majma'ul Bahrain, the point of the two seas, and that he sees symbolic as where the conscious mind meets the unconscious mind. This kind of territory, where this territory is, the fish, then the unconscious mind sneaks back into this great collective unconscious. They realize that was the point and come back to it. And that's where they find Khidr, who is, as Jung argues, the archetype of wisdom and guidance from God, as in divinely placed, but from the unconscious mind, which comes back and guides Moses through these series of events, which to Moses don't seem to, because to the conscious mind, they don't seem to be entirely logical or rational, because the unconscious mind works in a different way. You see, and see here for reference whether it's going to be Lacan with metonymy and metaphor, and how the unconscious mind works and is structured like a language, or is completely unattainable, as Freud said. Or so Khidr sets off on this journey with Moses, and he does things like he will puncture the ship. You see, and that's to kind of, it's to symbolize certain the kind of struggle and certain things in order that not being able to adapt leads to a disintegration of the self, that you have to adapt even if it's through some damage, that the lessons being symbolic, and then the killing of the boy representing this 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 kind of symbolic killing an immature psyche in order for a more healthy psyche to emerge. And this wall that they found was to basically to plant into the psyche certain treasures, certain matters that are to re-emerge. So we have many things planted in our unconscious mind that re-emerge later on in life, and they dictate our life for better or for worse, you see. And so he saw this whole story demarcating the disciple student archetype, but then also a representation of how God teaches humanity through these archetypes, through a divine archetype of the process of individuation, integrating your darker self, the shadow. But it's fascinating. I found that just wow. And it's something, you know what, I'll go through the whole process of what Jung says about that, and how he speaks about the process of individuation with the sleepers of the cave as well. And then what I'll do is I'll add, I bought this book actually not so long ago, having some, this whole, I think it may have been a thesis in essence turned into a book, but about the mystical commentary on this, and some the different tafsir, especially the Sufi mystic tafsirs on this point of the journey, and how it refers to the unconscious mind, and the nafs and the ruh, and way before Carl Jung. So what I'll try to do is maybe do a lecture where I integrate all of these and speak about them. I think that will be fun. Right, okay, let's move on, people. Yeah, Allah, yep, is showing through these verses the value of hidden treasures and patience that we couldn't even begin to comprehend in our difficult. Absolutely, absolutely. Right, so people, where are we at? Right, what is going on? Right. What's this? Maybe Khidr had neuro link. Okay. Thesis equals book equals movie. All right. Musa wanted Khidr to get a Patreon. Yeah. It is a fascinating story. The more I become intrigued, I've become more and more fascinated with just as an observation and appreciation of the whole mystical tradition that we have in Islam. Khidr, obviously, see, saying Khidr, and I've got a green blazer on. This is actually more green than it's appearing in the screen. It's actually quite a dark green, but for some reason, I think the camera is picking it up as a light green. It may be because of, I don't know, but I don't know why, but it's actually quite a dark green. Yeah. Nora, Allah bless you. Right, shukran for the super chat. Any words before Ramadan? Yeah, so Ramadan has fast approached, people, and what I will try to do is this Ramadan, I will try to keep certain episodes going. Okay, because I think it would be nice, and I also feel that I've been not been able to do as many episodes just because of preoccupations and things that have been happening, and my mother's health, and a lot of and other things as well. So yeah, so but I more and above just that the void. It's the fact that I have this feeling that I have this wanting to. It's like I want to do that. So yeah, inshallah, let's do that. And what I would say is, look, a few people had asked me um, about Ramadan, and I want to highlight that. Look, this, don't feel burdened by any way. Do not, sometimes we can we can get stressed out. It happens to all of us. We can think, oh man, I've got this to do. I've got to get this work done. I've got to get, um, oh man, now I'm not going to be eating well. I've got exams. I've got, I need caffeine. Oh my God, I'm going to lose size because my muscles, I won't be feeding protein. It's surprising. I'm going to feel drowsy without my food. I'm going to feel ditzy and, just fatigued and lethargic. And we've all had these thoughts. Everybody has thought and it's normal, it's human, it's the fitrah. Okay. But I want to tell you something. Honestly, I encourage you all to, on YouTube, type in things like the benefits of intermittent fasting. There's many videos. There's a Dr. Berg, Berg. There's a few people with so many with the data, with the science, with the feedback, with qualifications, medical, with holistic qualification. You'll have people that are so health positive, breaking down to you and for you these things. Because look, just take and I don't want you to misunderstand this. I'm not trying to say we'll come in a moment to the religious thing, but believe me, our worldly perspective shapes how we see things. People see fasting as, oh, I'm just going to be hungry and not have coffee and not have food. And oh my God, I'm going to be just grumpy and I'm going to be like this. And that's because they are seeing it worldly. These people need to just have a watch of some of these videos. They'll be like 10 minutes long. You can watch them at double speed if you like. They will show you it's phenomenal. The health, the benefits, the mental benefits, the health benefits of fasting so long, and they will guide you on what not to do. So don't go crazy with all this fatty foods and all this stuff when you do iftar and when you do this. Allow your body to trigger something called autophagy. It's actually where the body turns on itself and starts eating some of its self within, which sounds bizarre. But actually, once the body enters, usually once fasting has become a pattern, within something like 36 to 48 hours, the body goes into a state of autophagy, so long as you're not ruining it with all these ridiculously fatty foods. If you're eating healthy in between, what that does is it will, although it sounds freaky, but the body will turn on what it will start to do is it will start to turn on any potentially cancerous cells. And we all have these kind of cells, by the way. So we have cells at a very small molecular level that are malreproducing, but the body it's gradually destroying them. It doesn't allow them to develop to a certain state. The body starts to eliminate all of these. You will find that the body within days will start to work on resetting insulin to a certain, it will start to free up radicals. It will start to work on trying to free certain stem cells. You will see the mental clarity that the body is providing you. You will find yourself losing unhealthy body weight. The fats, the body will start resorting to consuming the fats. You will be so surprised how powerful the body is. You'll be so surprised. I mean, it is all, we have been misinformed. I'm telling you. You will start to realize, I didn't actually need the amount of food I was eating. That, to give you an example, people have done this to bizarre lengths. There's on YouTube, you can see that there was this person who actually fasted like that, abstaining from all foods, obviously drank water. He could have teas and coffees if he wanted, took vitamins. He did it under medical surveillance. He fasted for 13 months. I mean, I'm not suggesting you do that, but 13 months. No, it goes without say, when he began, he was obese. By the time he finished, he was absolutely healthy. Not only was he healthy, his diabetes had disappeared, his insulin had been reset entirely. And doctors thought that that's crazy. As soon as he starts eating, it'll come back. With follow-up checks after 5 years, no, they found his insulin was just as healthy. Look, you will be surprised. That's a ridiculous amount. You will find this happening within weeks. Within 2 weeks, your body will be resetting so many things that we just don't allow it to reset because we keep eating. Since I've watched these videos, and there's so many, the science in it, the knowledge is undeniable. Since I've watched it, I've stopped. I've pushed now I just have brunch. I do not have breakfast. I will just eat at probably earliest 11:30 or noon. And it's amazing what it's done to my body. It's so, look, what I'm saying is, just from a worldly perspective, know that there is so much, wallahi, when I started, I ended up watching these videos because because of my mum's health. I got onto them and I started watching, and then one thing after another, and YouTube brings you more and more, and you start watching more. Wallahi, it changed my life, or an incredibly significant part of it. It reshaped. I used to think breakfast was the most important meal of the day. That's nonsense. It is not. And we in the Western world, where we constantly eat, are providing ourselves with so much, like the body has everything it needs to fix itself for the most part. The problem is we don't allow it because we're constantly, you see, it's under stress. It's like it's got to hold up some weight, but if you give it enough time, it could push the weight up, but we keep loading it. So we're having breakfast, now it's having to digest that, the liver's having to store the fatty deposits, it's having to break things down, the kidneys are at work before, just as it's finishing, it hasn't even finished, we're smacking down more lunch, it's having to deal with more, the gut microbiome is being messed up, we're trying to clear up that, in between we're throwing all these fatty foods, this junk, this just desserts and sweets and sugar, and we're throwing sugar, and we're doing this day in, day out to the body. I'm telling you, the two lead causes for cancer, contrary to what you may imagine, two lead causes are food and stress. It's what you eat and stress. These are the leading causes. Sure, a person could be, they could be exposed to certain radiation, a person could smoke and maybe they develop things, and it could happen. I'm not saying, but the main leading causes you'll find are these two. It's the nutrition. They say now that I think is it 1 out of every 2 or 3 men in his lifetime will now have cancer. That's, and I think for women, is it 1 out of every 3 or 4? So it's slightly less. But the, this is simply coming down to, it's not much else has changed for humans. It's our diet. We're eating processed foods, we're eating junk, we're flooding our systems with sugar. Now, look, Ramadan is a beautiful opportunity. Look, it's there anyway. It's there anyway. Look what the Prophet ﷺ said. He said, Sumu tasihu. He said, fast, you will gain good health. That's counterintuitive. It doesn't make any sense to people. They're thinking, well, no, I'll have less strength. I'll have less. No. You see, you think that. Yes, there's a small brief moment where you'll find the hormones kind of being released, ghrelin being released, which triggers the hunger response, but that gets subdued. Then the body will start turning on malignant elements within it and eating it during this state of autophagy. It will also start providing clarity. Hence, you find people who fast between 36 to 72 hours, they result in laser sharp clarity, mental focus. You can watch this on YouTube. People will be recording. They'll be shocked how clear their thinking is. That they're expecting the opposite. So, and the irony was, you see, this is why you see in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, you see the companions, you see they're struggling, you see in battles, a lack of food, but they would fast. And you see, whilst the Sassanid armies were thinking, haha, that's funny, that's interesting, we're going to eat up all this food for energy. And the Muslims, on many occasions, were fasting. Many of the greatest conquests in Islam happened during Ramadan. Right throughout Islamic history. And you think, well, they're not going to have energy. You see, but that's counterintuitive, because you're going to think that. You're right. Logically thinking, you're going to think that. But that's because you underestimate how the body works. Under stress, the body is designed and equipped to release exponential capacity. Do you know when the stem cells are used up, at a fetal stage to generate the limbs and the different body parts, there are several, whether it's a few million stem cells, they say, but there are still several stem cells that are left remaining. They don't just completely, they don't just wither away. The body actually stores them deep into the bones. And why does it store them? And it's with the entelechy, the potential that should this body ever come under such dire death, encountering stress, that the body will release things. It will release these super, almost nuclear sources of strength that it doesn't know it has. That this is sumu tasehu. Honestly, and look forward to it. Trust me, you're not gonna lose anything. You're not gonna lose size. The amount of people, they stress on and lose size in the gym. Don't worry about these things. It's gonna come right back. Yeah. You're gonna gain some phenomenal strength. You will have clarity of mind. You will have focus. You think you're worried. It will also show you how truly in your independence from food, that you are not dependent. I mean, ultimately, I get it. We all are, but not in the way you think you are. We think we're dependent. Oh my God, I haven't had breakfast. Oh my God, I'm gonna die. I haven't had the coffee. Oh my God, I'm not in that way. We're not in. That's all just psychological. So I say, let's use this opportunity. Let's embrace, but be weary, don't flood your system at iftari time with all this nonsense and fatty, kind of unhealthy junk. Be a bit, treat your body like the temple that it is. And with that in mind, let's take this opportunity to explore even a bit, if we can, of the Quran. Even a bit. Just let's try. We're going to surprise ourselves. I'm telling you. You're going to think, I'm busy. A little bit. You're going to love it. It's going to be amazing. But let's just try. So this is what I wanted to say. Yassar Allah. Allah make things easy. Ameen. Right. Okay. So, guys, I wanted to share with us from today's episode of Legends of Islam. Allahu Akbar. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present Allahu Akbar from the Legends of Islam. Allah, Allah, Allah. I did put some notes so I don't forget. Right. Al-Imam al-Awza'i, al-Rahman al-Awza'i. He is one of the major dons of early Islam from the era of the Tabi'een and Atba'u Tabi'een. He's born in 88 Hijri in Ba'labak, which is in Lebanon. Now, he is one of the major imams, by the way, when we speak of madhabs. He's a contemporary of Malik, Abu Hanifa. He's one of the, the heavyweights back then, the dons, the legends. That is Rahman ibn Amr, right, ibn Yuhmid al-Awza'i, okay, known with the kunya of Abu Amr al-Awza'i. And this Awza' was actually a region just on the outskirts of Damascus, where there's an area known as, I think it was known as Bab al-Faradis in the past. I think it's Umara today. And it's right. So they had certain stables and things that they dealt with. And he resided in that region for a while. He became known as al-Awza'i, okay, with reference to that region. So that's his Abu Amr Abd ibn Amr al-Awza'i. He was born in Lebanon, where he passes away as well in Beirut. But he was born in Ba'labek, an ancient site of humanity, really. And he was orphaned. And when I say orphaned in terms paternally, his father passed away whilst he was very young, just an infant, really. So he grew up in a very impoverished state. He was incredibly poor as a child. But this is interesting because, people will often use such setbacks to say, well, oh, I never got such and such in life. Oh, such and such got a head start. Such and such got. It's true. But imagine you've got here an orphan who doesn't even, in what was a patriarchal society and a time that was patriarchal, he didn't have that fatherly shade over his head. He didn't have that support of a man to kind of show him the path. And then on top of that, his mum didn't have much wealth, so he was very poor. Now you take those, elements, you put them into an equation, And Imam Awza'i is a testimony that no matter what your circumstances, you can attain a legacy. And you think today you've got it bad with today's opportunities. What do you think it was like back then? You go back 1300 years ago. How do you think it wasn't tough then? It was much worse. So that's how he grows up. His mother, when he was 4 years old, um, um, his mother takes him to Beirut. And there she knew some relatives of his father, and she kind of asks them to help foster him. And they try, and they start helping, and he sets off on his way. This becomes the journey of what will become the great Imam Awzai. And they say about him, he grew up to be this man of presence. They say he was, somebody, just of average kind of like stature. He wasn't too tall, wasn't too short, but he was had broad kind of shoulders to him. He was brown skinned. They, compared that to Imam Malik, we've spoken about, white with blonde eyes, and he more very. He was somebody who would often wear an imama around his head, and and he was known actually for being very very handsome. He did have some very handsome features about him. And these things as well help, I guess, in life. A person's, sometimes it's strange. Sometimes people's looks reflect, or they tie in. There's a symbiosis, this kind of symbiotic relationship with their inner self and outer self. Sometimes there isn't, but sometimes there is. So he studies Islam. He studies with many scholars, Ata ibn Abi Rabah, Ibn Shihab Zuhri. He travels, goes to Mecca, he comes back, he moves between cities, and he catches the eyes of the authorities who realize this guy is very talented. And they do try to give him the position of a judge. He refuses it. He refuses this because he just didn't want to be in that kind of, didn't want to have that kind of liability in front of God, really, to have made mistakes as a judge. It's a big deal. And these were people of conscience. And he was somebody who, he went about, he would teach voluntarily, he would do all his, he was very generous with his time, with his knowledge. And in fact, there's a mas'ala here. He's somebody who would not take a reward when teaching. And that's, that goes to show, that's a testimony to his character. And there is a mas'ala in fiqh known as akhdul ajr ala ta'aleem, that can a person take money for teaching? And you find Awza'i on that stance, that no, he's discouraging of it. Well, you find on the other side there are people like Imam Malik, who was who said that was fine, and many of the Malikis even encouraged things like that. But you see this difference going on. But one of the interesting things about him as well was he's very committed to the study of hadith and sunnah. So he was dedicated to hadith, sunnah in that sense. And he became very serious in his day and age. He wouldn't laugh much. He wouldn't crack jokes. He wouldn't do things like, although they say he used to before he became very religious, but he then kind of, he wasn't as indulging. He was more of a somber personality, unlike people like Imam Abu Hanifa, who are very jovial, very witty, always cracking, very loving humor. Sufyan al-Thawri, surprisingly, is paradoxical personality. We'll have to cover him soon. But he was always very loved humor. Imam Malik was, I would say, more often than not serious, but did upon occasion indulge in jokes and humor and things like that. But Awza'i is probably on the far end of being very somber. You know, he wasn't really, didn't like to mix that up. And he would, yeah. But in his lifetime, he started to gain this acceptance. And he, and like I mentioned, the authorities, Bani Umayyah, they liked him. They took a fascination for him. And they say he had a soft spot for Bani Umayyah. Bani Umayyah do give him a certain, they gave him a certain amount of iqta', which is a certain amount of land they had donated to him, which he had, and he would use that for, obviously, to survive and food. There were endowments, so you'd basically have the crops and sell the crops, and it's like basically an annual source of income. This is how it worked in the past, by the way. So how did these people used to survive is they would have endowments. So somebody would give them an endowment, give them a piece of land. Now then what they would do is get some workers that would work on it, and the workers would be given a portion of the crops. So let's say they said, let's say this, I don't know, it produced, I don't know, let's say that they had a certain whatever, and it was going to certain crops, and they would have produced something like, let's say 20 or 50 tons of wheat, or 20 tons of wheat. Now, what would happen is the workers that they would use, they would often say to them that, look, well, okay, at the end of the year, your allowance will be, let's say, 1 ton or 2 tons of this will be your allowance. And then the rest, what they would do is they would keep a certain amount themselves. Let's say they kept a few tons for themselves or whatever it was, for which would last them a year, and they would retain it in the granaries, and they would keep a certain amount to trade off, and then they would sell the rest. So they've got money coming in. And then every year the crops would reproduce and regenerate. So you've got money every single year. That's how it worked in the past. In case you're wondering, how did they used to make a living? Before this world of services. Now all we do is sell services in the West. Yeah, so that was, but he was somebody that took things very, he took things very seriously, and almost quite personally. I think like that, maybe he was more sensitive than you'd imagine. And this could be part due to his upbringing as an orphan, and all of that undoubtedly ties into his personality. But he would take things sometimes quite personally. And they say Ibrahim ibn Adham, you know, who's a famous tabi'i, walked past one day and saw him in this circle, in this gathering, and he's got all these people wrapped around him, and as in, they're encircling him, and he's teaching, and he's giving his circles and his live streams, and uh, as he walks past, Ibrahim ibn Adham says, he looks at his circle, so he notices Ibrahim ibn Adham, and Ibrahim ibn Adham kind of says something and walks off. He says, "لو كانت هذه الحلقة لأبي هريرة." Naughty. Sometimes I don't know whether they're teasing or what, but the Tabi'een had a much greater personality of teasing, by the way. They were much more relaxed and humorous and witty than people assume, than those who came after them, which is telling. That speaks volumes. So he said that, if only such a circle of knowledge like this was for Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. Now, what does he mean by that? Now, that's exactly like, is that a diss? And so it kind of sounds like it's a diss. It kind of sounds like he's saying that, Even Abu Huraira didn't have this many people around him. Like, you must be something special. But it seems like he's saying it in a sarcastic way. So Awza'i got up and just walked off, and just he took it personally, personal. Yeah. He was somebody like that would take things quite personally, actually. Yeah. And he, speaking of that, there's a narration that he got into a debate. So he got into a debate with Sufyan al-Thawri this one time, and they're in Mecca, and they get into this debate. And Sufyan al-Thawri says, so they're at the outskirts. I mean, they're in Mecca, but outside of the Haram. And Awza'i comes there, and he kind of like he meets Sufyan al-Thawri, he gets off, and Sufyan al-Thawri, and then no sooner than they know it, it turns into a little debate. And Sufyan al-Thawri says, no, it's not like that, it's like this. And he gets worked up, Awza'i does. He says, oh, no. He says, it is like this. And I think as well that he may have been somewhat, some of these great imams and great scholars of Islam, I think they may have been somewhat more on slightly, and not in a bad way, I don't mean this in any kind of, but slightly more on the spectrum than your regular people. Maybe not like full. So what's the word nowadays? Like neurodivergent. Yeah. So they would have been slightly maybe neurodivergent than other people, because their behavior seems to reflect, and their attitude and the way they would get, sometimes the frustration would get them. So Imam Awza'i, when he's gets into this debate with Sufyan al-Thawri, who's also one of the heavyweights of that time, of that era, and Sufyan al-Thawri says it's not like, so he gets all angry, and he says, but I've said it. And then he says to him, you know what? There is the Kaaba. Let's go and nalta'in. What nalta'in is, we're going to basically take an oath of, like, we're going to take an oath of la'na, of curse and damnation upon us if we're wrong. Like, we both do it and we see, like, nabtahil. Like, come on, let's go nabtahil. Yeah, like, let's go take mubahala. Like, we're going to take an oath that if I'm not right, may the curse of Allah be upon me. And they say Sufyan al-Thawri just kind of smiled and laughed. And he said, it's not that deep. It's okay. and then, but what's fascinating is that as Awza'i gets up and mounts his horse again, Sufyan al-Thawri takes the rein of the horse, and he straightens the kind of the shoe clip where Awza'i's feet are, and then takes the horse and leads it in, and says to people, make way, make way. He says, he clears the thing as he's leading the horse in, and he says that this is Imam al-Awza'i. See, there was a dignity, there was there was an honor in their dissents when they disagreed, and it is really so fascinating to learn from. And yeah, so you do find these debates did happen, and there's a famous one transmitted by where Awza'i debates Abu Hanifa, and Imam Abu Hanifa, and Awza'i approaches Imam Abu Hanifa, and he says to him that, what's this? You don't do Raf al-Yadayn. And you can see Imam Awza'i's temperament. It's like very, he gets agitated by certain things. And he said, what's this? You don't do Raf al-Yadayn. And Imam Abu Hanifa said, well, it hasn't been soundly established. and Awza'i says, really? He says, حدثني ابن شهاب الزهري حدثه سالم عن أبيه ابن عمر عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم that he did Raf al-Yadayn. So he reads the chain. So Abu Hanifa says, okay. So chalo. He says, acha, ye game to hum bhi khel sakte hain. He says, that game, we can play, two can play that game. So Imam Abu Hanifa says, okay. He says, حدثني حماد حدثه إبراهيم حدثاه علقمة والأسود عن Abdullah ibn Mas'ud that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not do Rafal Yadayn. So whoa, so Awzai, he gets, he would get. See, one thing is he would get quite agitated on certain matters. So he gets agitated. Imam Abu Hanifa was a great legend. Imam Abu Hanifa had such a witty and funny personality and teasing personality about him. He would often tease people and crack jokes and very witty jokes, often wind them up. He would wind them up. So Imam Abu Hanifa, so he gets all worked up. Yeah, he does this is Imam Abu Hanifa doing the Uno a reverse card on him. So he gets worked up. And Imam Awza'i says, what? He says, Ma hadha. He says, what is this? He says, قلت لك. He says, حدثتك عن سالم عن. He says, حدثتك عن ابن شهاب عن سالم عن أبيه. He says, I told you from Ibn Shihab, from Salim, from Ibn. This, according to some, by the way, is the golden chain. Right? According to some, not Bukhari, but according to some. He says, I told you, I give you Zuhri from Salim. Salim's the son of Ibn Umar. He says, I give you from Salim, from Zuhri, from Salim, from Ibn Umar, and you quote to me Hamad, Ibrahim, and he says, what the hell is this? So they say Abu Hanifa says to him, that Abu Hanifa said to him that he said, what's wrong with that? This is like where Abu Hanifa's kind of like just laid back and he just kind of swivels his chair. It's like, acha. It's like, what's wrong with that? He says, Hamad is, he says, Hamad afqahu min al-Zuhri. He says, Hamad is more knowledgeable than Zuhri. And he says, and Ibrahim is afqahu, is more knowledgeable, Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, than Salim. Salim is one of the fuqaha sab'a of Medina, by the way, 7 scholars of Medina. And he says, and Alqama, he says, is no less than Ibn Umar, but Ibn Umar is a Sahabi, so we respect the Sahba, without a doubt. He says, and Aswad, these are some, the Tabi'een of Iraq. He says, Aswad, he says, فَلَهُ فَضْلٌ مَعْرُ. He says, everybody knows Aswad. And he says, وَأَمَّا Abdullah, which is Ibn Mas'ud. He says, وَأَمَّا Abdullah, فَعَبْدُلlah. Allah. So this is one of the famous narratives which goes to show the ideology of madhabs and how they preferred regional scholarship. And they gave them, according to their worldview, they gave preference. And it did not mean that they did not know hadith, but that they viewed hadith differently, as the Hanafi madhab and the Maliki madhab did. But here, in this instance, they say Awza'i stormed off. He stood up and he was angry. Say he stormed off. Say Abu Hanifa just smiled. There was something, but they wow. But these people, they had something about them. They say that when all of these gathered. So Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, he says that he transmits from Malik, Imam Malik, because all of these gathered in Medina. They had a meeting, all of them. There was Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, al-Awza'i, Sufyan al-Thawri, and Layth ibn Sa'ad. The fantastic 5 people, right? So And they say that they asked Malik, Ijtama indi, he says, Abu Hanifa and Sufyan, Thawri, Awza'i. And the person, Yahya al-Qattan, says, I asked, Ayyuhum wajadta arjah? Who did you find preponderating above them? And they claim that Malik said Awza'i. Awza'i is and was unquestionably a legend of Islam. He was somebody who was known, by the way, his appearance. He would often dye his beard. He would use kind of color. So this what we call mendi or henna in Arabic. This coloring, people use a very like a gingery bright red, but it does come in black or in brown forms as well, which is most likely the kind that they used. They used the darker types, not the gingery. You have some people, they dye their beard with mehendi red. I'm not saying that's wrong. That's fine. That's their choice. You're allowed to do it. But the mehendi that the classical people used in Arabia and in the Middle East was the most like, there was one that was close to black. Like from afar, it looked almost black, but when you came close, it was very dark brown. They used that. And there's one that was just a medium brown, medium to dark brown. That kind of they used more often than not, although there is the red one as well that is very popular in India, Pakistan. So yeah, and there's a very fascinating story really, that when the Abbasids took over, they came and they you had Abdullah ibn Ali as-Saffah, Abu al-Abbas as-Saffah, bloodshedder. They say he killed anything. A generous figure is like 30,000 people. On average, they say anything between 50 to 80,000 people the day he entered Damascus. He was known as the one who sheds blood. And it was him who established the Dawla Abbasiyya, the Abbasid dynasty. And when he came and he took over and he killed all these people and he announced himself as the new, that I am here, Allah, that amma ana fa ana. Then people, I is me, and I, me, and myself are finally here. And all of you are going to now deal with these multiple personalities. Whoa, so Saffah. So Abul Abbas as-Saffah. So when he was doing that, they say in the coming days, as he was as the dust was settling, somebody mentioned to him, like he said that nobody would ever dare challenge what we've done. Like Islamically, what we've done is right. So somebody said to him, well, there is somebody. And they said, who? And he said, Awza'i. Said, Awza'i? Acha? Ye Awza'i kya cheez hai? He said, bring Awza'i here. So now people came to Awza'i. He said, Badi mushkil hai, Baba, badi mushkil. You might as well do one. Oh, time to run, because Abul Abbas as-Saffah has invited you. And his invite is not the type you want to go to. So, and you see, Awza'i was known for a soft spot with the Bani Umayyah. And this is probably why, you see, Bani Umayyah always liked Awza'i. That it's not surprising that his student, Sa'sa ibn Salam, then ends up in Andalus. And the early madhab of the Andalusi Bani Umayyah is actually the madhab of Awza'i. It's only maybe a century into it or something that they formally adopt the madhab of Imam Malik. And then for the remaining 700 years, it's really just, Imam Malik's madhab. But prior to Imam Malik's madhab, when Abdurrahman al-Dakhil and those people first get in and conquer and set up Al-Andalus, it is the madhab of Awza'i. and they have with them the student. They invite Sa'sa ibn Salam, who's the student of Awza'i, because they loved Awza'i. Was very, he was seen. He did have a soft spot for them as well. But he was somebody very straight. He wasn't. This wasn't about favoritism. For whatever reason, he must have seen, you know, whatever his working out was. But he must have seen them for who they were. So, yeah. Now Awza'i's been invited to Allah, huh? Safa. This is like, if any of you are daunting to go to the dentist, this is not like that. This is like that 100x, to the power of 100, because this is a one-way ticket. What I'd say is, if you're going to meet Safa, I wouldn't advise starting any, new TV series or anything, because you're not going to get to realize how it ends. I wouldn't bother filling out the rest of the week's planner, really. I wouldn't bother. So he turns up to the courtyard of Abu al-Abbas as-Saffah is there. And Awza'i says, when he's walking in, by the entrance kind of hallway, there's a few dead bodies that they've killed that are dumped there. They're waiting to, the guards are removed. So he has to step over these bodies to get in. This is the appetizer. I hope you like it. So he goes in. So now that he's in there, they ask him. Safa says to him, Safa asks him, he says, "Are you Awza'i?" He says, "Yes." And Awza'i goes in wearing this fresh thobe and an imama, prepared for death. This is a suicide mission. He is euthanizing himself. This is what it is. He's going in with the intention he's not coming out alive today. So he goes in and he stands before him. Safa looks at him and he says, "Awza'i." He says, "Yep." He's probably thinking, "Kya cheez hai yaar? What is this? What is this thing? I've just killed 50,000 people." So he says, and you can see, for intimidation, I say intimidation, but it was actually probably for truth. They have there's a guy with a sword standing there, and they have the kind of, they would have this thing called a nata, which was like almost like a rug. They would lay out the rug, and then they would chop the head off, so it would just contain some of the blood. So they've got the nata and the sword. If you were lacking motivation, that is. This is the pre-workout drink. They're like, "Don't worry, yaar." So he says to him, "What do you say about our affair, our doing? What do you have to say about us and what we've done?" Here, Awza'i looks at him and he said, "The Messenger of Allah said, Innamal a'malu binniyat, that actions are by intentions. Wa innama likulli imri'in ma nawa." Says, each shall have what he intended. Says, I have nothing more to say. I like it. Huh? Safa is like, अच्छा ये game, अच्छा ये game खेल रहे हैं. Playing that game. Let's make it more specific. And let's zero in. So he says, more specifically, what do you have to say about the people I've killed? There's going to be a clash. loggerheads. So Awza'i says, حدثني شهاب الدين الزهري عن no, sorry, not Shihab al-Din al-Zuhri, but he says, حدثني فلان, such and such person has transmitted to me from such and such person, from such and such person, from Ibn Abbas. Who is Ibn Abbas? The great grandfather of Abu Abbas al-Saffah. He says, he has narrated to me from Ibn Abbas that the Messenger of Allah said that the blood of a believer cannot be shed except for the crime or so on and so on. And then he just says, well, acha. Check. See, because here Safah is, Safah's blood is boiling. It's boiling. But you see what he said, people are listening. He's saying, I'm not saying this. No. This is Abdullah ibn Abbas saying it from the Prophet. Not any companion. Your great granddad, Abdullah ibn Abbas, is saying this from the Prophet. Acha, Safah is a bit snookered. He's like, game अच्छी खेली आपने. आदमी गलत चुना. He says, acha. He says, but what about this wealth? This wealth I've taken, is it haram? Awza'i says, if it was haram in their hands, it doesn't suddenly turn halal. It remains haram, I guess. You see the beauty, and because by adverse judgment, if it was halal in their hands, then it's definitely haram in your hands. But if it was haram with them, it still remains haram with you. He says, well, if it's haram in their hands, I guess it's always haram, isn't it? Here, Safa is like, Puttar, जो तू game खेल रहा है. This is... So he says to him, look, right. He says, look, listen. He says, enough of this. Us seizing the rulership, the caliphate, is this not wasiyah lana? Qatala alayha Ali ibn Abi Talib? You see now here, because the Abbasids rose on the back of the Shia movement. They were Shia. You have to remember this. People forget that the Abbasids were Shia. It's later they diverged to blend into a greater Sunni Islam. The initial Sunni Abbasid movement was Shia politically, not ideologically, but politically Shia. So he says, look, listen, is this not a wasiyya lana? Is this not something that was written for us? Qatala alayha Ali ibn Abi Talib. That Ali fought over this so we can have it. What do you have to say to that? So Awza'i says, I said, if that was the case, then why would Ali have been pleased with the tahkim? The tahkim is when the Hakamain was when Ali and Muawiyah had a truce, and they said, look, we'll just have two arbiters, and they can judge. And Ali accepted it. Now, he says, فَلِمَا رَضِيَ عَلِي بِالْحَكَمَيْنِ. If this was something that Ali was or making sure that people got through him, then he would never have accepted an arbitration. Now, Awza'i says, I heard that, I said that, and then I removed my imama, thinking, you know what, I'm going to let them get a clean chop off my neck. Over and done with that. Yeah. He's like, I've had enough to say. I've said what I could say, and now I guess I know how the film ends from here. He said, I took off my imama, and he said, and the people around me held back their cloaks and cloths because they knew some blood was going to come splashing now. And he says, I said that, and Safah was just flabbergasted. And he just froze in his, he just, it's like there was a glitch in the matrix. And he seemed to just appear confused. And Awza'i says, in that moment, this is it. You see, courage doesn't have to always roar, but Allah sees it. He says the divine help descended, that some people, he says this aide came in and said something to Safah about something and Safah then became distracted and said, oh, is it? And he gets up and there's some subtle commotion. And in that commotion, people started to move. And he says, and I realized, oh, I'm still alive. He said he was waiting with his amama for his head to be chopped off, and it hadn't. And he says, I just saw this as my sign. I put the imama on. And he says, and I just walked my way out of the palace, and I was gone. He says, I was gone like the wind. And he says, and I left town and I went, and he saw, he had some sanctuary. But wow, this was the legend, al-Awza'i. But he continued, after Safah, the leadership starts calming down its approach, and it reaches people like Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, who are very, very politically sassy and savvy, and they're very mild, and they're now Sunni Muslims. They're not even openly Shia anymore. Or not even politically Shia. So he tries to offer Awza'i wealth and position, but Awza'i refuses it. He wasn't interested. But such were these people. Allah. And he passes away in the year 157 Hijri. And he passes away in Beirut. He, from his some opinions, by the way, that he had left behind from his fiqh that were practiced in parts of Spain as well. That he had certain opinions, like some were about decorative, and even agriculture within the mosque was something that was based on Awza'i's understanding, that you can do that and it's healthy, and the people that come to pray can eat the oranges and eat stuff. And this was practiced in Muslim Spain within the courtyard of mosques, but it was actually based on his madhab. Another fascinating ruling that he had was that the apostate, it was halal to eat their meat, not their actual meat, but the biha. So if an apostate sacrificed an animal, you can eat that animal. That was an interesting opinion he had as well. And the awra, the awratul fakhid, that does a man have to cover the thigh? And this is a huge debate because the Maliki and everybody debate this. So it was of the understanding it was only in a mosque that you cover it out of etiquette. Otherwise, outside the mosque, it's not an awra. It's not something that must be covered. He was married, naturally, as most people then would have been, and his wife's name was Juwayriya, and she was I believe the the widow of Abdullah ibn Dahak, or the divorcee. I think the widow of, so he'd married her and had several children with her, and his kind of more popular child was Muhammad, that kind of continued to teach his legacy after him. And you know what's interesting? I'll tell you something that's fascinating. You know, in his time, I mentioned Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. He was somebody known for standing up for the rights of people. And you see this, that when he died, when Awza'i died in 157 Hijri, uh, his janazah was so well participated and observed that countless Christians and Jewish people came out to his janazah. He's one of the only imams in Islamic history who countless Christians participated and observed his janazah, and Jews as well, but especially Christians. And the story behind this is he was actually given the title Shafi' al-Nasara, somebody, the intercessor for Christians. And that is because, see, what had happened is in Abu Ja'far al-Mansur's time, there was an insurgency in Lebanon. There was a Christian settlement. Obviously, I mean, they're still Christian till today, many people in Lebanon. And there was this uprising that you had between some Christians, some zealots, and they kind of had this militant uprising. And so what happened? Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, obviously he crushed the uprising, but then he made a point that he was going to crush the entire Christian settlement in that part of Lebanon. And he declared that every Christian must migrate from there, or he will have them killed. There's no, because as far as he was concerned, the uprising, the group, the militant group that rose for the insurgency came from that area. So it was collective guilt. So he said, I don't give a damn that these people are, they all, once he'd crushed it, he said, I'm going to raise that whole ground, that whole town to the ground, that they have so many days to leave, and anybody left there, I will kill them. Like the armies are just. So what had happened, so wasn't the Christians still the majority in Sham at the time? Yeah, they may have been in certain parts, but not. So in this particular part that we're speaking about, there were many Muslims around. This was a particular town that was Christian. So they were, you're right, in several other parts of Sham, they would be Christian dominated. But this particular town that was Christian, because the insurgency came from there, Abu Ja'far Mansur was adamant to just, he wanted that, he held the whole town responsible. And he said that they should all die or they can run. And obviously they didn't want to. So Awza'i rose in their defense. And he stood his ground. And he went up and he was firm. And he said, this is haram, that he would die defending them. That you cannot, he said, put the guilt of a fi'ah, a small group, on the entire settlement. He said that these people are innocent, that they have, through Allah and His Messenger, they have aman. They have security to live there. And that this would be a violation. It would be going against Allah and His Messenger. And he stood his ground till the end. And Abu Ja'far al-Mansur he pushed him on it. He was adamant. But then he realized that we're going to have to kill Awza'i to kill them. And, this will just cause too much chaos. Like, he wasn't, still early days in Abbasid time. And that's a huge, he's a huge Sunni scholar. One of the major muhaddiths in Islam at the time. You're going to kill him. It could cause, like, you don't know how the reaction would be. So eventually Abu Ja'far al-Mansur just, he relented. And the Christians, they loved Awza'i for this, that till the death he was prepared to, he said that this is haqq and I will stand with the haqq. And this is why he was known as Shafi' al-Nasara. And on his death on his at his funeral, uh, obviously it was massively observed by Muslims, but countless Christians turned up. Countless Christians. That he was probably the only Imam in Islam to have had his janazah observed by so many Christians. So wow, so that was something really fascinating about him. His I'll leave you with a final anecdote. When he passed away in the year 157 Hijri. He died an accidental death, and Bichara was killed accidentally by his wife. It's not a laughing matter, but so his wife Joadia, back then they had these saunas, these kind of intense saunas that they would take, but they were almost like airtight, very very little ventilation was in some of them. The way they were built with stone, you see. So nowadays they build them with wood and but built with stone. So some rooms they had very little ventilation. So what they would do is they would go inside, and this was a big thing in the Salaf era. They would love going to these kind of like Turkish hammam kind of saunas, and some people had their own private ones. And so he had his own private little sauna. So he went in there, a small little room, and so he's gone in there, and he's taken in this huge this thing with fire, obviously, as it generates all this heat, and his wife accidentally locked the door from outside. Like, she didn't realize that he was inside, and she thought she was going past the thing, and he was just quiet, obviously, and she thought, oh, that's open, so she locked it and just put the lock on, and he couldn't escape. Ya salam, honestly. And they say he just kind of eventually just gave up, and because it was far out, it was slightly out, it wasn't by the main settlement, nobody could hear him. So then they say he lay down, faced the Qibla, put one arm under as a pillow, and just lay there, and in that he passed. May Allah have mercy on him and bless his afterlife, and really inspire us with his legacy and the legacy of others. But wow, huh? She she killed off an entire imam and a madhab. Oh my God, ya salam. That's and she was actually given the fatwa by one of the imams at the time that she buys a slave and frees it as a kind of, as the kafara for manslaughter, qatl al-khata, that you free a slave. So she did. Obviously, she was gutted. But wow, she just killed, and you know what the Abbasids couldn't do. See, that was a devoted woman. Allah bless her. Huh? She was like, she goes, Yar, she goes, huh? Leaves the thing unlocked. When they're devoted and keen to help, that's when you've got to be wary. So Vichari killed off. Little did she know that she stopped an entire madhab. Oh no, it was by accident. May Allah bless her afterlife. I mean, so I thought let's share that with you guys. So somebody wrote, what? No, the great strength of women. Yeah. So wives kill you slowly normally. It's that clip that he just thought, you know what? Let's just take this opportunity and go. He's like, I don't know how much more I can put up with of this woman. I think this is an easier way out. So, la ilaha illallah. God, but imagine that though. The dread. She's like, well, right, gather round, children. I've got some news. So, your father accidentally locked himself inside the sauna, and yeah, really Mm, bad one, really. Mm. Astaghfirullah. Oh God, no. May Allah have mercy on all these people. But I remember reading that. It's so hilarious. I mean, it's not a funny incident, but it's ironically humorous. Like the punchline of it is funny. May Allah bless us all. Ameen. Ameen. And bless especially these wives that are so devoted and keen to help. Next time, they might want to open the door and just look inside that nobody's there and then think, okay, chalo, now we'll lock the door. Somebody said, kids, my bad. And then she said, good news is, guess who's got the sauna all to themselves? Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great. That's great. God. Ah, ya salam. Ah, Allahu Akbar. Let's take a look at. So that was the legend of Islam, people. Abu Amr al-Awza'i. Whoa, is that the? This is his place, his kind of memorial site in Beirut, and a poem by him. وَمَا نَحْنُ إِلَّا مِثْلُهُمْ غَيْرَ أَنَّنَا أَقَمْنَا قَلِيلًا بَعْدَهُمْ وَتَقَدَّمُوا. Allah said at a gravesite that we are but exactly like them, except we still remain like we remained yet for a short while, and they set off before us. Wow. Allah, Allah. All right. So, yeah, guys, you know, it is getting quite late. Whoa, it is quite late. You know what? Let's wrap this up. It's been awesome, as always. Um, Somebody asked a question, can I buy Imam Malik's Mudawanna in English? It's a good question. I think some of it has been translated in English. I'm pretty sure some of it has. Try, try, I don't know, Googling, see if anything comes up. But cool. Other than that, it's been good. It's been sensational and emotional. Allahu Akbar. And inspiring being online with you guys tonight. So yeah, somebody said Pakistan. Yeah, very briefly, it's terrible what they're doing to Imran Khan. And I really do make dua that may Allah, give him strength and steadfastness. May Allah enable some restoration of success really to Pakistan. Ameen. And may Allah enable him to come back with a sweeping victory and to build that country with a better future. It's shocking that, if you look at Imran Khan, even though as hurdled as his rule was for those few years before he got ousted, Pakistan was at, I think, 6% GDP. It was the highest in decades, despite COVID. I mean, that's the data speaking for itself. And it's crazy what they're doing. And, they're trying to forcibly arrest him and shelling his home with, tear gas and all this stuff. And he's got a picture of and I really commend the spirit and the strength of those, the unsung really soldiers, true soldiers of Pakistan, not the army, but the the true soldiers are those the public that are standing, risking their own lives and well-being just for a vision. You see, nobody they don't have anything to gain from it, but it's a vision. It's for freedom. Yeah, Pakistan Zindabad. And may Allah bless Imran Khan. Seriously, I'm just absolutely I abhor. I can't stand this, this Sharif family and the politics that they do, and even the Pakistani army leadership that are so corrupt and meddling in all these affairs. It's a shame, because really most of the army of Pakistan, it's people that love the country just as the people do, and to have that much corruption at that level, it's like, wow. But yeah, we make dua. Ameen. People, with that, I'll wrap this up. Um, have you watched the recent debate between Javed Hashmi and Shadee? Shadee? No, I haven't. I've got to still watch that. Is it good? I hope it is. I've got to still watch it. But yeah, guys, let's wrap this up. Oh, and some people had mentioned somebody for the MindTrap something. I think there was a comment. If there's anybody that you feel is good or interesting, let's just reach out to them. If they're interesting and interested, then just let me know. You can message me. And to reach out to me, Instagram is obviously the place. If you're not already subscribed to my YouTube, do so, people. Spread the love. Click the notifications, man. And if you need one-to-one perspective sessions or consultations, then head over to patreon.com/MALM, and you can select it from there. It's tier 2 that allows you to book yourself into an hourly session. So a few people, they have a bunch of questions that sometimes it's personal, sometimes it's religious, sometimes it's a mixture of stuff that they really would require or would like some guidance on or a discussion on. So you can just put your queries and questions and things together and book yourself a session, and we can inshallah go through some of that. And other people, they just generally are just menteed, if you like. So they have these regular monthly sessions, which are always wonderful to kind of build a bond with someone. People, take very good care of yourselves. Allah bless you all. Wassalamullahi alaikum wa khuda hafiz.